Okie dokie.
No relation. No relation whatsoever. Get this going on here. Hi, Mrs. Ryan.
Hello,
There
hello.
we go. Get everything situated here. We're back. Everything look all right?
You look great.
I feel like it's been 2 weeks because even though we were back for one show last week, I was totally out of it. So
Yeah.
I don't really feel that I was fully present.
Nope.
But with that, welcome back today. Hi, Mrs. Ryan.
Hello.
Welcome back, everybody else. Tonight is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. My name is Jay Ryan. This is Nicole Ryan. We are the Ryans, and this is It's Tonight's show. This evening, almost took off, and that's a wonderful segue for our guest this evening. As I said before, there's no relation, but our guest tonight's name is Chuck Ryan, Jr. He's very interesting. We don't know much about him, but we are very interested in the subject matter that he's here to discuss. NASA, space shuttles, movies, all sorts of things, and he's very well dressed. So we're going to get him in here in a few minutes. Until then, Mrs. Ryan, what has been going on with you? How are you? How's everything been? Let's catch up.
It's been super busy. And for everyone that inquires about me, because I'm awesome and there's a lot. Just kidding.
A lot of people.
I've switched levels of where I'm at with my MS stuff. And so I'll let everyone know, you too. Thought it's like having dyslexia, but for thoughts, not letters.
Yeah.
So sometimes I literally think of an emotional thing and say that instead of the intellectual answer that I know is proper.
I understand all that. I would say sometimes it's almost as though they're the dyslexia part. It's like if the answer to a question is yes, you want to say yes. You'll literally say like, no.
No. So weird.
It's kind of like, I thought it's confusing. It's hard to wrap your head around.
It
Luckily,
is.
I can translate it, but for other people who don't
Thankfully,
know you.
that's why I like to have you around a lot. I make weird faces. You understand me better than anyone, even than myself. So
That's how it works.
I've at least gotten to the place where I recognize that that's the disconnect now. So I just have to teach myself and train myself to let myself be dyslexic.
Yeah, or at the same time, if it's that simple, then the people around you just have to realize that everything is binary, and it may be the opposite one that she's saying. It's kind of everything needs to just slow down, because I feel like if there's time to check in back and forth, everything gets figured out immediately, in the moment, real time.
Yeah. And
everybody moves so swiftly these days, and nobody's really listening, and connections aren't actually made, synapses aren't actually, And I think that people take away different parts because a lot of things were said and not, whatever. If the whole process could just be slowed down, I feel like we'd all actually understand each other a little
That's
bit
what
more.
I get
Maybe
out of
feel understood, which is probably really important for
It's
some
really
people.
the important thing. And that's what medical cannabis does for me. So it slows everything down.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Which,
I mean, that makes sense.
for a while, it was confusing because it was different than my normal regular pace of taking in information. But yeah, it's helping tremendously.
Well, bravo. Bully for you. Bully for Mrs. Roar.
So when I see everyone and I say weird things, FYI. That's what's going on.
Good for you. Without being the official, what's going on?
Yeah.
I only have a couple things to get through today. I'm trying to think about the weekend. We should probably talk about the weekend. We did a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Breakfast Club was great. I'm trying to remember. It's almost a blur because of the rest of the weekend. What happened at Breakfast Club? Anything?
I
it
just
being a nice
remember
day.
it was such a nice day, and there were
Great
familiar
weather.
faces that showed up. We spent a lot of time outside, so that's really what I remember. It was awesomely
joy.
casual and everything that I wanted Breakfast Club to be. I think you too. Really communal.
You're
and
right.
lovely.
Maybe that's what it was. There was some of the original OG, Guards Rad was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, what did we do on Saturday? I know we took it easy and we did some things around here, but Sunday we did the big 5C event over in Culver City that our friend Girk from Grandson Creative and his wife Christine from Mila Chocolates put on over there in Culver City. Great time, great spread, great group.
It was
I had
really
a great
neat.
time. Yeah,
It was really neat to see, and those gold chocolates that Christine made were incredible.
stunning. The stunning 9/11.
Such a
Ah,
cool
shit.
weekend.
Well, that reminds me of something. You stay here, Mrs.
Oh.
Ryan. I've got to go to the fridge. No, you know what? I'll do it during the news. No, I got to be here for the news.
Go
You
away.
say something. I'll be
I'm
right
gonna
back.
say something. I want to thank everyone at Miller Chocolates and everyone who came out. It was a unique group that showed up, and it was so much fun. And those chocolates are incredible. So everyone, I hope, goes there. But so were those vegan cookies that didn't taste vegan. They tasted so good. There was chocolate and coconut and almond stuff in there. Christine was telling me all about them. They're pretty rad. But
You're
this
pretty
is
rad.
the piece de resistance.
There were, yeah, the little gold chocolate 9/11s were fantastic that you're talking about. There were also prizes awarded. I forgot to mention. Yellow Car won a prize.
We won a prize.
Yeah, I know. And then look at this.
Oh,
It's
cool.
It's a big chocolate 9/11. For real.
Neat.
Isn't that awesome? It's actually chocolate.
That's so cool.
Even the underside. I didn't know that till right now.
Oh, wow.
I thought it would just be, isn't that neat?
That's super
There
neat.
you go.
As Christine, God, you are so good. So good.
That. All right. You know what? While we're on the subject of viewer mail, here, put the thing up. There we go. I did not mention the other day when Kevin Lynch was here, our guest on Friday, Kevin Lynch. What a great show.
Love
What a
that
great guy. Can't wait to see you again, Kevin Lynch. But he also bestowed us with a lovely gift. If there's one thing people who know Mrs. Ryan know she loves about Porsches, it's one thing. If you had to put it in one word, what would it be, Mrs. Ryan?
Houndstooth.
Houndstooth. Ray Schaefer knows this very well. So does Kevin Lynch. Kevin Lynch gave us a lovely gift. This is like a desk pad type thing, for your whatever. This is real Pepita houndstooth fabric from Porsche, but it's got a little snaps, and then you got a little,
And it's a little
look at that, a
holder.
little desk tray.
So cool. Kevin's
awesome?
so thoughtful.
Lovely.
I love it.
Maybe it's probably not how you're supposed to use it, but maybe it goes this way. I don't really know. We'll figure out how all this stuff works later.
It's so pretty.
But it's pretty exciting. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to Gertrude and everyone at Mila Chocolates, Servetica Culver City, and Renworks Stat as well sponsored that. Sasha from Porsche Beverly Hills.
Cool.
And I think that's probably everybody.
Look forward
like
to
it
the
should
next
be.
one.
All that stuff's out of the way. I only have one video to play today,
Oh,
Mrs.
yeah?
Ryan. And it's checking in with somebody we haven't seen in a while, which may give it
Oh.
away. Let us take a look behind.
Awesome.
Roll it.
Howdy, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan. This is Kennel from behind the orange curtain. We're near Pismo Beach, Morro Bay. That's Laguna Lake. Wave, Jennifer. There's Jennifer on Amigo. Our friend Judy from New Jersey on Bubbles. There's Lewis. He's on Doc Holiday. And I'm on John Wayne. Yeehaw. Rawhide. 4 horsepower, 4 people. Just not enough.
Wow. All right, well, a couple things there, Mrs. Ryan. One, I am pretty sure I'm going to have to go ask Paul Kennel for a version of that video without the music in it because it's going to get us kicked off YouTube.
I thought that immediately.
It had what sounded like the theme song to the Wild Wild West. Or no, maybe Magnificent Seven. Does it sound familiar to you? Could you hear the music?
Mag 7 is my vote.
Just a little bit. He's so polite. He's being quiet. Our guest, Chuck Ryan Jr. Anyway, horse riding. Who knew?
Looked great.
Love the auto kennels.
Love you guys.
Love the auto kennels. We had a great time with. That's who came too, wasn't it? Wasn't Paul Kramer there at Breakfast Club?
No.
Ah, shit. Where did we just see them too then?
At Auto Kennel the week before. You really lost
Yeah,
a
I
week
lost
with
a
that
week.
tooth thing.
Bad tooth. He yanked a wisdom tooth last week. All right, well, forget it. Mrs. Ryan, I'm fully caught up. Segues aside, let's check in with the question that's on everyone's mind.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. What's going on, Mrs. Ryan?
In the Netherlands, I did a story recently that this is kind of a part 2 to. part in the Netherlands, they're really addressing loneliness in people, and so they've created a chat checkout.
Wait a second. Is this where you had the hugging cows the other day? Therapy
No,
cows?
that was different.
Okay.
London has chat
Oh, okay.
benches now,
Right.
but that's part of the same force of like get out there and talk to people.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so this is
Commune with one another.
this is in
Get
the
off
Netherlands.
Your screen device, right?
Yeah, and their whole thing with they do a coffee there for older people, and volunteers can come
They do
in.
what, coffee?
They do a gathering,
oh, I
kind
see.
of like Breakfast Club. Like it's a place that exists currently, people go to, but we go there to commune with friends and to meet people that are all
Exactly
like
why
us.
we go there.
There's whatever. So they started a coffee thing like this in the Netherlands, but they're expanding to say like, okay, checkout lines are typically rushed and fast, and check out yourself and do all your own stuff.
Grocery store.
Grocery stores.
Yep.
But if you want to just slow down and have a chat with the person behind the register, they're offering it up. There's like signage that smiley face.
Basically, they have so you've got the express line. We came up in the 80s, and now we've got the slow line.
down
where
line.
like this is where the chatty guy who wants to write a check
Yep.
goes. Wow. All right. Well, I mean, whatever.
It's nice.
Hope
I
it's
love
paid by
it.
the hour.
I love that they're addressing loneliness everywhere.
Yeah.
Chickens
There's so
and
many people. I can't
tutus.
figure out how anyone's lonely. There's so many people on this planet.
I know.
I don't mean that disrespectfully. That's not something I've ever suffered from. Maybe being an only child, I was always had to spend time alone, and it's not ever been an issue. You know me. I don't deal well without some alone time.
Yeah, you need it. I think other people are not as used to the amount of alone time they're getting, myself being an example.
Okay.
And so they're looking for opportunities to find like-minded people.
Oh, sure. That
More
makes sense.
so than just like, yeah, if you go outside, throw a rock, like you can meet anybody you want. But like,
It's kind of interesting. That's what I found the internet did. It found that it grouped all these like-minded people together, but now we've got all these pods of people that hate each other. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like we need to do the thing where you don't agree with every single thing with someone because no one does. It doesn't work that way. You have to be able to accept one another's differences and strengths. By the way, sometimes differences and what you see as a weakness might be their strength.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not really up to you. I don't know. The whole thing. I can't stand everyone in everyone's business. That's why I don't mind the alone time.
Okie doke.
Sorry, Mrs. Ryan. It's my own stuff. I'm thinking. There's some people we know are going through some stuff right now, and I'm talking to them as they go through it, and I think a lot of that is on my brain as some of the things you are bringing up because this stuff applies to everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
I think that's what is trickling out. That's what people are finding out. It affects everyone.
Yeah.
All the same stuff. So finding
We're all
something that you
damaged.
can
We're all broken. We're all perfect. We're all imperfect.
we're all figuring it out. So sometimes it helps to have people to figure stuff out with.
That's it.
So,
I agree.
on that note,
Ooh.
personalized pet adornments are a thing on Instagram with chickens.
Whoa. What?
Chickens wear tutus on Instagram. It's becoming a thing.
Oh.
And I'm supporting it only
Little
because
Yeti Seinfeld? That's all I could think of. Take a little Yeti Seinfeld for a walk.
maybe. I don't think so. But listen, there's this whole movement of like, don't eat them. So like, what do you do with them? And some people are making.
Oh, so we're humanizing that. We're making them not as edible by making them more cuddly and lovable. And
Yeah, so they're putting tutus
like some people don't
on
eat
them.
bunnies because they're cute.
They're adorable.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's taking over Instagram, and it just made my day because it's like cute dog pictures, but different.
Yeah.
There's like rainbow tutus and
I'm
pink
out.
tutus.
I'm
I know
out.
you're out,
Awful.
but if you're looking for something cute to look at, check out Chickens and Tutus. Eddie Murphy is going to do stand-up again.
Yeah.
It's been such a long time.
Well, we just watched. It's the only episode I think we watched, but we just watched the new. It's funny. I said Jerry Seinfeld, Little Jerry Seinfeld. The new Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee just came out. The first episode is Mr. Eddie Murphy, and like everyone else, I watched that one the first day because Eddie Murphy,
It's pretty incredible.
kind of royalty in the
Seeing him
world that we
again.
come from. Yeah.
Yeah, well, apparently, obviously we're not alone, but like there's been
He just
rumors-
doesn't come out very often. Last time I
No.
saw him was the 40th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. That was 4 years ago.
Yeah, and to me that felt very hidden in Cloak and Dagger, like he was just there as part of something, not him, and he's awesome.
I think it was the opposite. He was just there being himself, and everyone wanted him to like dance.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, yeah. Well, he's in talks with Netflix to do a series of specials,
That'd be great.
and I'm excited about
Be
it.
very curious to hear what his voice is like these days.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder.
where he's coming from. I mean,
Yeah.
he's lived a different life.
What he's talking about. Yeah,
than he lived when he was doing stand-up in the Raw days.
Yeah, he's a very different dude now. You're right. So he's going to be working stuff
awesome.
out at clubs. I can't wait to see him. And
Agreed.
then lastly,
Oh!
for everyone that wants to feel old,
Ugh,
Friends came out
every day.
25 years ago.
Oh, jeez.
And to commemorate it, Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, the LA Starbucks, like the localized one, is making 6 different beverages for every Friends character, and you can buy whole coffee beans there that are from the coffee place from the show.
Central Perk?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're branded.
Oh, I see.
I'm just
I see.
an- I'm
That's
a
cute. Now there's
nerd.
branded. Okay, so they're coming out with the coffee for the thing and they're selling it. I gotcha.
Totally. I'm just
That's
such
cute.
a nerd for
Yeah,
that show.
why not?
I think it's such a neat idea.
I used to love the NBC store when I was a kid for the same
Yeah.
reasons, because you could get the Central Perk mug back then, the big bowl mug.
Yeah,
All that stuff. I'm a nerd too. That's it.
that's it.
And that. And that's been What's Going On, Mrs. Ryan. Dun, 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 dun.
You're awesome.
Mrs. Ryan, we have been verbose today. We've been going very long, 15 minutes. Holy smokes.
Uh-oh.
I know, I had to run and get my props here. Let us take a quick break. Time to get our guest, Chuck Ryan Jr. Do I say the junior every time? Is that part of it, or do you care?
That's
Not necessary. All right. Chuck Ryan will be in here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about a lot of things, not necessarily from here. See you in a few minutes. More to come right after this. There we go. All right. There we go. With that, we are back. Hi there, Chuck.
Hi, Mr. Ryan.
Chuck Ryan, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Ryan.
Mrs. Ryan.
Hello.
Mrs. Ryan, Mr. Ryan. It's the what was it, Oprah Uma thing from Letterman way back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great pleasure to have you here today, Chuck Ryan. I don't really know exactly what we're going to talk about, and that's perhaps what I'm maybe more excited about. I know a little bit about you because you advanced some information and some materials, and certainly the subject matter of NASA is very interesting to me. Certainly anything outside of where we're generally anything expanded outside the bubble that we all live in regularly. I don't know where to start. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you? I see your NASA pin right there, and then how you came to be here today.
Well, I've had the privilege of working for NASA since I was 18. I've served on 8 different programs at 3 NASA centers, including I got to fly on the Kuiper Airborne Observatory at 20. It was a C-141 SP cargo plane that NASA retrofitted with a 1-meter infrared telescope. And by flying above the water vapor in the atmosphere, they can get a clear infrared signal. And this telescope was responsible for discovering the rings around the planet Uranus. No joke.
Even
No joke.
moving at that, because you're outside, you can get a better image, even in motion.
Yeah, the water vapor in the Earth's atmosphere absorbs infrared signal. So when you're above that, you get a clear infrared signal.
Right, but even the movement, it's still, compensation-wise, it's even still is better.
They have yes. There's
Wow.
the telescope travels on an air bearing. It's
So it's not
there's
affected by movement as much?
That's exactly right. And there's a star tracker system that can just lock in on a star.
You're like, we're NASA, we know how to do this. Sorry, my bad. Perhaps I'll just let you go for a little bit before I interject, by all means.
And then I worked on different things at Ames.
This is totally unintentional, forgive me to cut you off, but I happened to redo some stickers, and I just noticed that the NASA one's actually in the shot unintentionally.
That's
That's
excellent.
the
Excellent.
branding is perfect
Awesome.
and unintentional. I'm going
Thank
to say that
you.
was your energy,
Thank you.
so well done. I'm done cutting you off, please.
My first project was a research aircraft called the Quiet Short Haul Research Aircraft, which was the QSRA. We speak in acronyms, so you stop me if I start doing that.
And at some point, we are allowed to talk about all these things that we're talking
Absolutely.
about. Okay.
And when I was 18, I grew up in Michigan, in the forest. I'm
Where
a
in
woodland
Michigan?
creature.
I heard you say that.
I grew up in the northern Lower Peninsula in a place called Grayling.
Okay.
3 stoplights, don't blink, canoeing capital of the world, and I had the best childhood ever. I wish every child could have a childhood like mine.
Bucolic settings, just everything.
Just climbing trees and snowball fights, and it's
Sounds
like
like
a
our
Christmas
childhood.
story kind of.
Oh,
I often say it's a cross between the 70s show and Happy Days, with a little Dukes of Hazzard thrown in.
I love all those shows.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I grew up with Dukes of Hazzard. That's great.
But yeah, when I was 18, I bought a decrepit. I know you guys are car guys, so you'll like this.
Sure.
Triumph, a navy blue Triumph TR7.
Okay.
Just a beautiful
Great
car.
looking car.
Great, that's exactly right. Great. I'm
mean,
glad
stunning
you
looking
said it
car.
like
and stunning
that.
driving, but getting it.
Most unreliable car ever made by mankind. Made a beautiful lawn ornament. So I tell my parents are, they didn't go to college, and I had ADHD. I was lightning incarnate as a kid.
Okay.
My poor
Were you
parents.
medicated in any way? Or?
No, my
Okay.
my parents decided not to do that.
Okay.
I don't know how my life would have turned out otherwise, because it's a superpower and a
Yes.
curse. So
Yes,
if
if
you
you can harness it.
right,
Yes.
that's the key. So my poor parents, my childhood was a matter of fleeing the country, being shot at by tanks, flying
goodness.
airplanes over my house, getting frisked at an Air Force base for getting too close to nuclear weapons. I mean, I was all over the place.
Wow.
And I think my dad kind of liked it because he realized I wasn't going to do anything bad because I wanted to be an astronaut.
Right.
And
And how early did that start? What the heck gave you the I want to be an astronaut? I feel like every kid has it at some point, but I mean, what was it for you?
Yes.
Because you actually formed a career.
I'm a little different.
Okay.
I was born as an orphan on Halloween of 1964, the day the first astronaut died in the line of duty.
Smokes. Was that in the capsule fire?
No, his name was Captain Theodore Freeman, and he was flying a T-38 landing in Ellington,
Oh, a test.
outside of Houston.
Gotcha.
And just a routine training flight, and ran into a snow goose on final, and just and
Can't predict it. One of those things.
no, and that's really why I'm here.
Wow.
I'm here for my NASA brothers and sisters. That's why I'm in Hollywood, is to tell our story, to tell a NASA story of our generation.
But I also I stepped on what is a very important story, it sounds, for you personally. An orphan on Halloween 1964. Obviously, those other things that happened historically are very important and significant, but back to you.
I didn't know that until after I was at NASA, actually.
Okay.
Hey, what happened on the day of my birth? Oh, well, there we go.
That's the hindsight 2020.
Right,
yeah.
right. But I was what they call a child of Apollo. Kids born in the midst of the space age and the
atomic
space
age.
race, and the awe-inspiring images of the Apollo program, Apollo, Gemini, and Mercury. I was after Mercury. So yeah. There was a dictionary that my parents had that had the beginning of it was a pictorial representation of the space program, and I remember just being absorbed by that and getting to that and just looking through those images of those Gemini astronauts smiling. And I always said about astronauts, they're always smiling because they're doing every kid's fantasy. Their lives are that. And that's
literally living the dream, right?
Living the dream, exactly.
I always thought it was partially, and this is the adult me, I always thought that partially it was also because they were all such, I mean, they were the best of the best. They're the most evolved of mankind to have the body that can go do that work. And to me, it almost seemed like, well, Fred, I'm getting too deep here. Please, go ahead. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's what I thought of NASA. That is my idealism of what NASA was.
Okay, so maybe we are aligned here.
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted NASA, they're, especially today, in the civil war that's going on, everybody against everybody. And in your beginning monologue, I think the internet does have something to do with it, like you were saying, people are in echo chambers now, and that's not healthy for anybody. And I looked at NASA
what do
as...
you mean people are in echo chambers?
Well, they get in these groups with like-minded
and it's just all
subjects
the stuff's bouncing back and
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And
no
I wanted,
external influence.
Yes, and I'll admit, I've watched more than my share of Star Trek. But the reason I love that is because it's the idealism of peaceful exploration and discovery, all mankind going together to the stars to find out what's what.
Absolutely, there was a general the Great Equalizer was built into that factor. Right,
Roddenberry was
We're all
awesome.
the same. We're all
exactly,
the same, just hurling around space.
And that's really why I like NASA, the idea of NASA. And I think as an orphan, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I was born in California, but grew up in Michigan, and they treated me like an alien. Hey, he's from California.
Yeah.
We're all related in some way here.
It's Muppets in space for me.
Yeah. So
You're Gonzo.
Yeah, and I was looking for where I belonged, and I'm very idealistic, and I think the word swashbuckling romantic is what I really like. I'd like to be dashing. I don't know, how dashing I am, but I would like to be dashing. So I went to NASA with this decrepit car against my parents' wishes, with $300, and I had written
That's
a letter.
totally a NASA engineer's car, by the way. Just to be clear, it totally is. We're like, I'm going to make it work. I'll figure out a way to make it work. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Tinker dream,
3 water pumps, 3 alternators. I Stromberg carburetors. I took it while I was at NASA. I took it because it needed an engine rebuild once I got there. And nobody would work on the thing. So I went to the British-Italian guy. And during lunch, I go into the garage, and it's between a Rolls Royce and a Ferrari 308. And I'm like, this, I'm sleeping in that car. So this isn't right,
Yeah.
And that's what happened is I wrote a letter, just this duty felt letter, I'll do anything. There was a letter waiting for me when I got to California. Sure. You want to work for free? Sure.
No kidding.
And
really?
That's the crux of it. When I got to NASA and I got my first NASA badge, which was, over the moon at 18,
Nice pun. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, that was not accidental, by the way.
Good timing too.
But I was there, and the thing of it is NASA was in the midst of so many hiring freezes and budget cuts and lack of. Nobody knew what NASA was doing, that they needed people. So she's like, hey, this letter is really cool. I'll forward this to engineers. And I could choose where I wanted to work at that point.
Wow.
And
simply because of your initiative?
Yeah, they needed people,
right. The other people they were having to drum up and recruit, and you were actually saying, hey, I want to play. Wow.
Absolutely.
Holy smokes.
Good
for you. That's
I had $300 to get here. And I'm like, I'll sleep in my car. I don't care. Because Silicon Valley, even then, was kind of, not what it is now, of course.
But it's aspirational. Right? Is it aspirational? Am I off? Never mind.
No. I don't know. Is it aspirational to live there? Back then?
Well,
at that time frame?
I went there because that's where I was from. In my house, my first house was at the end of the Ames runway. So my dad was 20 years Navy. He had lied about his age to go into the World War II last year.
Lied older to go, yeah.
Yes,
he was underage,
yeah. Did 20 years Navy on a carrier. And I got that sense of duty from him. And I thank my dad for that. And I wanted to serve.
Was it the work ethic or the sense of service?
Sense of service.
Okay.
And so I got to California, and I went to work, slept in the car, and I loved it. I was just happy as a client. When you're 18, you can get away with that kind of thing.
That's about it.
And but Ames, I went there because that's where I was from, and I wanted to go to college. And
cool.
So, but the more I worked at NASA, the less I went to school, and I got picked up as a paid NASA employee with the Kuiper Airborne Observatory. I just went out there. I said to myself, that is so cool. I'm working on that. And I went out there every day in a suit. And until finally the guy is like, I'm just going to hire you because I can't have you showing up here every day in a suit. So.
You're going to be here every day. My liability is at stake here. I got to handle this.
And they issued me flight suits and jackets. I'm 20, my NASA nameplate. And, I just...
And you're just
I grew up at NASA.
You're taking it all in at this point?
I was so gung-ho at that point.
Just a kid sponging it all in?
Yes, and
how old were you at this point?
I was 20 when I got my flight jacket. And I found a NASA that was beleaguered. And I found that was my branch of the military, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Except for the mindless or the senseless killing back and forth that has gone on throughout history. I wanted to be part of this. And I was on board.
Yeah.
And then Challenger happened. And I was at Ames at that point.
Oh, my Lord.
And it just reinvigorated my...
Was that 86?
Yes.
86.
My... they were our NASA family. and it is kind of like a family, and I just found where I belonged, and I wanted to do something to help in any way I could. So I transferred. I also worked on the wind tunnel there and a little bit of Sophia, which was the replacement to the Kuiper, which is a 747 with a 10-foot infrared diameter telescope. So I went to Cal Poly. My branch chief went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. So I went down there to study astronautical engineering. And that's awesome. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it is rocket science, as they say.
Quite literally.
But in the summers, instead of going back to Ames, I thought, well, I really want to be a part of the manned space program. So instead of going back to pay at Ames, I decided to go and volunteer and do my same trick that worked before to get into the Johnson Space Center. Right. So I went to the Johnson Space Center, and the beauty of volunteering was back then was you could choose where you wanted to work. And, of course, I chose the Lunar Mars Exploration Office, Planet Surface Systems. And it was on the 20th anniversary of Apollo 11.
Oh, wow.
And just the other day was the 50th.
Last week, yeah.
So I got to write 3 sections of the annual report to Congress having to do with the base sites. And it was, and they said, Chuck, come back again, join us again next summer, and we'll even pay you this time. And as I left, I saw a familiar face in the hall, and I didn't want to, be too, fan.
Really familiar face.
Yes, and so I just said, hey, and he said, hey. It was Buzz Aldrin.
Oh, boy. If there ever was an astronaut, I'd like to meet.
Oh, he was cool. And I actually have pictures with him, but that's later.
Fantastic.
So the next summer I went down there again, but their budget had been cut for Lunar Mars. And that was 80. I worked there in 89, so it was 90. And my branch chief just said, hey, the usual happened. We're not doing that now. My advice to you is to work on something that's closer, more attainable.
Okay.
So I went to work for the Space Station Program
Office. Is that somebody
Office.
telling you to have smaller goals? That's like a weird...
Well, no, it's, like what... don't work on something that's going to get canceled, basically, is what he's saying.
That makes sense. Just future-proofing your efforts.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I went to work for the Space Station Program Office, and students don't usually work at the program level, but I was volunteering again, so...
You also had way more qualifications and work history than you're supposed to at this point because of all of this volunteering on the wall stuff.
And so I had to I worked at Stop and Go on the graveyard shift to allow me to work there.
Store? That's the convenience store.
Yeah, it's like 7-Eleven in Texas.
Okay.
and I should mention at this point, there was a bar called the Outpost Tavern, and the astronaut that went to my school, his name is Robert Hoot Gibson. Hoot was his call sign,
Sure.
And he is the coolest astronaut. Coolest shuttle astronaut you'll meet.
Really? How
yeah,
cool.
and in fact, when he left the astronaut office, he went to work for Southwest as a pilot. So, hello.
I definitely like that guy.
Yeah, very cool guy. And his wife was also an astronaut. They were both single when they got to the astronaut corps. He was the test pilot, naval aviator, and she was the MD, the medical doctor. And one of the,
this sounds straight
beautiful
out of
too.
It sounds Top Gun.
There's a lot of that in there, especially when you work with research
you got the ace
aircraft.
pilot, and then you get the doctor, who's,
Yeah, right.
Romance. Right. Romance ensues.
Yeah, and we like that. I used to be what I called an aero bigot because I'm a pilot and worked at NASA and studied aero engineering, and you put all those things together But then I started meeting other aeros, and not all of them are pilots, and so there is that going on, a little bit.
Okay.
But there's that here in Hollywood too. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
So I went to Space Station. That was cool. And the next summer, I'm like, I working 2 jobs like that is, I'd work there anyway. I was never. Money was never my focus, my friend tells me, which is very true. I'm all heart,
Yeah, sounds familiar.
So I wrote a letter to Gene Kranz, who was he's If you've seen Apollo 13, failure is not an option. He's that guy. Except that he didn't say that. That's Hollywood. And I wrote a letter. I'm like, look, I've worked at NASA,
Yeah.
and they just, they just brought me in at that point as an intern.
Okay.
And I worked in mission control, which is very cool.
Wow.
And at this point, I had decided it is up to my generation to carry the Apollo torch.
Okay.
From our Apollo heroes,
Okay.
to be passed the torch. And we can't drop it. We just can't. They risk and sacrifice
By that, what do you
too
mean,
much.
Manned space exploration?
Yes.
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 Manned. Okay.
And so
Which we are not. We're just only recently starting to do again, right?
we're
There was
grounded.
a number of years where we were not putting men anywhere.
Right, and we're grounded right now.
Okay.
Don't kid yourself. The United States space program, manned space program, is grounded. We have to pay the Russians to take our American cosmonauts to the space station. Very few people realize that.
Deadhead with the Russians up to the.
Yeah. In fact, I just saw the X-Men movie because I love the X-Men. They're orphans, and I identify with that. But they had a shuttle mission, and it was in the Endeavor. I saw the Endeavor being built, by the way.
I named it.
Yeah, no.
My school was one of those ones.
Oh, really?
Way back when, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. But, people will see the shuttle flying, and so many people think the shuttle is still flying. They still think that we do have a manned space program, and we don't.
The last time I saw it fly was 2011, something like that. Whenever it was, whatever year it was, where they piggybacked it to get it here. The one that's here.
I think that was...
It's the Endeavor, I believe.
13?
Okay, whatever that was. That's the last time I saw it out the window.
Right.
First and last.
So what I did is I was very gung-ho.
But your point is that there's not flying. There's not flying.
We are not flying.
They're in museums now.
Yes,
shuttles.
yes. Prematurely retired, but I'll get to that.
Ooh.
So I
maybe
created
a two-parter.
Yeah. So I created this group called Support and Promotion for the Activities of NASA, and I wanted us to be like NASA Special Forces. We would get out there, do outreach and education, and do small engineering projects that NASA wanted to do but didn't have funding for.
Wow.
Our first little project mushroomed out of control. And then a phrase that should never be said was uttered, and that is, how hard can it be?
Yeah.
The shuttle is just a structure, and we're engineers, kind of, And then we started building this thing, and we went and saw the Endeavor being built. And then my team probably looked at me, and I'm like, well, that's a little hard. Because Endeavor was laid out over acres of hangar space in pieces.
Where?
That was Palmdale.
Really?
In the Mojave
So they
Desert.
build it out here. Okay.
That's where they assemble it. Yes.
Okay.
And refurbish it. Wow. And where I was aboard the
When you
space
say
shuttle.
Mojave, is it Edwards? Is that where?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
No kidding. That's so neat to me. I didn't realize that.
So we started building the shuttle, and the university didn't like it. They're like, "Why is this monster being assembled at the aero hangar, and we don't know anything about it?" And there were deliveries. The news was up there all the time. And there was, every college story has to have an evil dean. That just has to happen.
I've seen Old School.
And our house, we got a house eventually. We rented a house for the Spanners. And I called it the Spanimal House because I was a little rambunctious,
It was one of the two movies I was going to reference. I figured I'd go with the one that was slightly more current, but of course, Animal House is the big one.
Yeah.
Double secret probation.
And yes. So this dean didn't like it. Move it off campus. And,
So he can't squash the project, but he can kick you out of
your
space.
He didn't think I could get it moved in time. So he wanted to just... I have a knack. And got it off in time. Some farmer, some no-nonsense farmer. This doesn't amount to a hill of beans, what that guy is saying. Just don't worry. And, his tractors. And he moved us to this... And it moved a bunch of times. We were building in front of a space shuttle. We actually had a cargo bay at one time. We did a 7-day mission simulation at Cal Poly.
This is unbelievable.
And then I kind of became a little lost because I figured I was past the point of no return, and so much had gone into it at that point. I figured that I didn't want to stop. Mm-hmm. But there was no purpose. The original purpose was pie in the sky idealism.
Mm-hmm.
And during one of the moves, it was lifted by a crane. The flight deck flipped off and crashed, and there were so many dimensional flaws. The thing needed to be built from scratch, and I'm like, well, what am I doing? And at that point, it was in Santa Maria, California, on this vacant lot that we had gotten with a double-wide modular building that wasn't hooked up to electricity and water.
My
and
goodness gracious.
So I got a call one day from the fire rescue team at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. And they said, quote, Chuck, we heard about this thing. We need it. Chuck, your country needs you. NASA needs you. Build it for us.
I mean, this is right out of the movies, right?
If there's one thing that they shouldn't have said to me, that was it. Because that was it. That's what I was looking for. You
wanted the strength to carry on, right?
Cause, exactly. And that was it.
This is right out of the movie, right?
Yeah, it sounds it.
So I was working. We had a span shirt. Our logo was a crescent moon with a shuttle silhouette passing in front of it and a NASA red vector. And I had the shirt, but I would wear jeans working, and I'm like, no, this doesn't work. Things have to be changed. It's official. It's officially unofficial now. So I had BDUs made with the shuttle program patch, basically a uniform. And the shuttle's name at that point was the Resolution.
Before I got a hold of it.
But when they called, I added an exclamation mark to the name.
Oh.
So it's, So we both changed, and that was it. The mission was on. And a week after they called me, it was a firefighter that called me. Then the captain called me and said, we heard about this, but we can't officially tell you to build NASA space shuttle. But we do want to need it. So if you get it done and get it to us, we'll use it. I'm like, it sounds like Mission Impossible. He's
yeah.
Like, it is. I'm like, all right. Because basically he's like, if anything goes wrong or you get hurt, we're going to disavow all involvement in your actions for liability actions. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh. Plus, we don't even want to affiliate ourselves with the fact that this is being done. But once it's done and it works, we'll take it. Yeah,
yes.
Sure. It's Tomorrowland.
And it was so romantic. And that's exactly what I wanted.
I know. You and me are the all heart. I know. I totally get it.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you do?
I got to work.
Full bore.
And remember, NASA has crew compartment trainers at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. They take dozens of highly skilled individuals, 2 years and $1 to $2 million tax dollars to build.
These
because
are
they're
simulators? Not simulators.
No, it's a mock-up and trainer.
Okay.
It's like a 2-story building that can rotate into launch configuration, which in that case is 3 stories high. And
wow.
Yeah, one student alone, no money, on the wrong side of the continent, living off grid. And then, of course, what happens in California? Another housing development was coming in, and I had to move it. And it's
you lost your space again.
Everything
must go.
So I ran across the street to the ranchero farmer, and I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if I build my shuttle on your farm?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, sure."
This is the fucking astronaut.
No, I was just going to say that.
Movie.
Yeah, that came out during that time, which was very odd.
Coincidence, yeah.
So I just want to say many Americans would not help somebody in this case. But these rancheros were the coolest people. And not only did they not care about liability, they loved the project. And so I lived with these, with the rancheros playing Vicente Fernandez music, and many of them were migrants. And I would buzz them in a plane with Bart Simpson on the tail when they're in their tractors on the field. And it's like this old world barnstorming story.
You're living in another time.
And we
Without
did.
a doubt, yeah. You're describing another time.
Yes. I didn't. This project didn't exist in normal society, and it was weird reassimilating with society after the project. But and fortunately, there was a railroad spur there, and I'm like, how do I get it? How do I get this 2-story building to NASA? And the answer was rail, in 3 building-sized pieces that overhung the rail car. I contacted the railroad and I said, "Hey, I'm a student. You mind transporting this, for gratis, And he's like, "Oh, sure, we'll work it out. Send me the dimensions." And on the rail car, I'm like, "Okay." I get a call from him, and he's like, "What the hell are you talking about? You're building a full-sized shuttle?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, there's no way. No. That's going to be expensive. It has to
doesn't
go."
want the liability either.
No, he didn't either. It had to go as a high-wide, routed special rail traffic
Long distance.
the entire
Long
continent.
distance, yeah.
Entire continent. But then the east side of the
don't mind a
railroad,
challenge.
the east side of the railroad called me, and they said, "There's no way. It's not going. If you even attempt to send it, we'll turn it back at the Mississippi."
Wow. They won't receive it. Even if you get it en route.
Well, they
won't
saw
receive it.
NASA as the destination. I think they wanted more money. I don't know, but they said no.
Yeah, or some money.
So that was that.
So what? What do you mean that was that?
I sent it anyway.
All right. Now we're getting to it.
Yeah. So for 3 months, I went with my best friends from. I have two best friends on the project. The one is my NASA cohort. He's was born in India, one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet, and
Is
worked
this
at NASA.
your engineering partner,
Yes,
essentially?
yes. We met at Cal Poly. We were just gung ho together, and he did DeLorean.
Jesus Christ.
So in the screenplay, I have. Me and my decrepit TR7.
He was driving a DeLorean at the time, so you guys are in a TR7 and a DeLorean.
Yeah.
At the time, two of the most unreliable cars on the history on
yes.
the planet, the entire planet.
Each had
At
personalized NASA plates. So
Geniuses.
yeah,
I love it now, but
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
thinking in the time, real
Right,
time.
right.
I mean,
pretty
DeLorean
funny.
did not have a good rap at the time.
no, they were both crazy bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And everyone else at NASA is driving a fucking Corvette.
yeah. So
This is like every movie I've seen. You're right.
the ranch was sold, by the way, so I had
Oh,
to
gotta
move
move
it
again.
prematurely. So I get
You
it
mean
loaded
ship it.
Yes,
Send it
yes.
prematurely. Okay.
because it wasn't quite done yet. So the farm is going to be bulldozed, and I had made friends with the farm dog, which was a black German Shepherd, and I thought his name was Lucky, and I'm like, that dog isn't lucky because it was in this pen, nobody would walk it, and I called him Sin Suerte, without
I don't
luck.
speak Spanish.
Yeah. And my catchphrase for the whole project was whenever somebody came to visit me, I would say, "Bienvenido a mi infierno," which is welcome to my hell. And I met this girl, my other best friend who I grew up with on the project, lived in Utah. He's a nice Mormon boy with 8 kids,
Oh.
but we grew up in Michigan together.
But when you were orphans, were you at something together, or just when you were children you met?
No,
and
I
you
was
became
adopted,
friends?
and
I see.
no, we just met in Michigan. We grew up together.
Writing Annie 2 in my head. It's cool.
So I met this girl. She was Mormon also, and I was
Mormon
finally
all-stars.
swept away. The happily ever after, and she was this enigmatic, intelligent siren. And the funny thing is our lives, after we finally met, we realized that our lives had been a double helix all along.
Yep, sounds familiar.
She had been.
I can tell you the rest of the story.
Yeah,
How many times were we in the same place?
Yeah.
No, literally.
Mr. and Mrs.
Really?
So many times, so many people, so many events, so many concerts, so many work events.
Yeah.
Different places in the country, different places.
Yeah, Yes, born in the Bay Area together. She was in Mojave.
Same
when
time?
we went down there, her dad worked in Mission Control, so she lived in Clear Lake City in Houston, and then Santa Maria. And then after, when the shuttle was moving, she moved to Utah. I went to Utah, completely coincidental. And I'll skip.
Meanwhile, this
Past.
is clearly meant to be. I'm with you.
Her friend, I moved to Minneapolis after the shuttle program. My girlfriend, it turns out, went to middle school with her in California, in Minneapolis. So, yeah, I want to hear you guys' story, too. But so anyway, I send this thing. I go there. It takes 3 months. And I thought I would just rush down to Louisiana, to the Mississippi, and talk my way through. And I would, plot it as it went across the United States.
Sure.
It went right across, sailing across the Mississippi. They didn't notice it. It went through the shuttle launch complex, Slick 6 at Vandenberg, went through L.A., went through Houston, and got to NASA in Florida. So I rushed down there in a car that blew up. I had to hitchhike in the middle of Wyoming, and I had a pizza box made that said NASA Houston, and that was in the back of the car, just for the heck of it. So I'm like using that to hitchhike, and I gave the car to some record guy. There's smoke billowing out of it. A semi pulls over. I'm like, where are you headed? He's like, I'm headed to Houston. And I was really just trying to get to the next town to get a rental car.
To eventually get to Houston.
Yeah, so I'm like, I had for 3 months in Utah, I'd built the seats and the 1,000 toggle switches that go into the shuttle at an aerospace company. And that's what happened was hundreds of companies stepped up and donated material, equipment, and services. I would call them,
just like the
I'm
movie
building,
again.
and it was beautiful the way people stepped up.
Mm-hmm.
And it really
Because
showed
they
me
believed in what you were doing.
they completely believed in what I was doing, and they wanted to be a part of NASA somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was great about Apollo is everybody was a part of it somehow. The whole country was behind it. It was, and then when we landed, the whole world stopped and looked at something positive we did.
Wow.
And so anyway, so back to the resolution. The resolution gets to NASA. I get to Houston. I get a call from the transportation guy. Chuck, I'm sorry, but some train accidentally hooked up to it and took your shuttle up to Tampa. Not Tampa,
But elsewhere.
north in Florida. And I'm like, how do you lose a shuttle? And
So it made it to the destination, and then
Yeah.
they sent it up to Sarasota or wherever by accident.
And I finally get to Houston again, and I wanted to be happy. And how do you lose a shuttle? So I ripped the guy at New Seventh Planet. I feel really bad about that.
Uranus. It's a
But-
NASA joke.
Yeah.
Space joke.
Yeah. So he's like, Chuck, we're going to get it back. We're going to get it in the center. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, all right. So I get to Houston, or to Florida, which is a whole nother animal. The opposite of the cold and windy dust storms, humid alligators. And the shuttle gets to NASA the day before the return to flight after Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working on mine and had been in Columbia getting dimensions for the resolution.
I watched that one live. It was the re-entry, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I had kept on tape on my watch, which they wrap your watch in when you go aboard the orbiter in your bunny suit. And I remember being on the flight deck of mine, remembering the position I was in Columbia. And then again, 7 other brothers and sisters that made the ultimate sacrifice and died in the line of duty. So there was no failure. Not an option. It wasn't even a thought. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that return to flight after that, they called it the return to flight mission.
Yeah.
That shuttle launched and another entered. And the resolution was not only taken into NASA Kennedy, but it was the railroad goes through what they call the controlled access area, which is the separate barbed wire fence that surrounds the vehicle assembly building and the orbiter processing facilities, which are the shuttle hangars, basically.
This is where it is before they take it on that long trek to
Yes.
the launch pad?
Yes.
Okay.
And by coincidence, solid rocket booster segments were coming from Utah, from Thiokol, and they hooked the resolution up to these solid rocket booster segments, took it through the shuttle fleet, and for one brief moment, the resolution was the only other shuttle to be amongst the fleet at Kennedy.
Wow.
Mission accomplished.
Right.
That's
Briefly. They had the understanding that we had to take it off center to finish it, which is fine, and we had a police escort, which was blocked traffic at NASA in 3 segments that went off. And it moved a couple times again until finally it was like in this undeveloped swamp area where I had to get solar panels out there and literally was swimming with alligators to keep from having heat stroke. In the beginning, that first night on the what I call the swamp site, I as the sun sets, I look at the sheen on the lake, and I could see all the trails from all the alligators in it. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to swim in there,
Right.
obviously. But as time went on and you're hotter and hotter. Well, you stick your feet in and then back out, and then you wade to the knees and you get out. And I scuba dive, so I had a dive knife and fins and a mask, and I'm like, I'm top of the food chain on this planet. Why am I afraid of them? Prehistoric. So I end.
We're expanding out here. Can we do? We're running out of.
I'm sorry.
No, it's for your sake. I want to make sure we encapsulate
Sure.
this stuff and
Well,
get to what we want to talk about.
Sure.
Less gators, more shuttle.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No disrespect. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
The book, which I wrote on an Indian reservation in South Dakota, is 440 pages. And
now that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Is difficult.
The story is already very big, and we're not even.
Well, Tropical Storm Faye sailed toward NASA like a warship. It anchored over NASA for 4 days, nights. They closed the center. And in flashes of lightning, waves crashed over the shuttle in a maritime-like tragedy because the lake overflowed its banks. And
come on.
Yes. But that wasn't the cannonball.
Salvage title.
Yeah, that wasn't the cannonball that sank the ship.
Really? It got flooded and that didn't do it?
That didn't do it.
Okay.
The mission was canceled. A new president came in, prematurely ended the shuttle program, and canceled the replacement program also.
That's what I remember. From Armageddon and the movies, there was always a replacement shuttle program, a new manned whatever, something or other.
So at the finish line, the mission was canceled.
Okay.
I didn't stand alone in this. I stand side by side with my NASA brothers and sisters in frustration and disgust over this, because this has been happening decade over decade. Tens of thousands of NASA engineers and scientists spend decades with tens of billions of tax dollars just to have their work canceled, and it's got to stop.
So that's what I was going to say. Is the argument it's almost like wasted potential, where we put all these efforts and all this work into something, and now you just pull the rug out?
Absolutely. Okay. We did not fail. The country failed NASA again. And it's got to stop.
It's a business, right? I mean, it's just.
That's why I'm here. I'm here for my NASA brothers and sisters to tell a NASA story of our generation and to show the American public what's been happening for 48 years.
Okay.
They canceled 3 Apollos. The Assured Crew Return Vehicle, the Space Station Freedom was drastically changed. Constellation program was canceled. The shuttle program was prematurely ended. It's got to stop. We're going nowhere. We're at Mach 25 in circles. So it's got to end. So
I feel that's everything these days.
It's like Robert Zubrin, who's a space advocate, says what's been going on is it's been a financial distribution philosophy rather than a goal-driven philosophy, and I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here.
I mean, again, that's what I was saying. It's business. It seems to be run as a business like the rest of the country, and it's one of those things where you're not going to win every time. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that you should. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and let me know how I can help. I'm on board. But it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I can't tell you how many jobs I've had the plug get pulled at the end, and certainly not as many hours involved as yours, and how much lifetime efforts, your livelihood involved.
Well, there are lives too. People have given their lives to the peaceful discovery and exploration of space, and their memory should not be. Their memory and sacrifice should be remembered.
Yeah.
So I believe what the solution to this problem is to have NASA removed from the executive branch of the federal government and placed in the hands of what we call a decadal survey, which is a panel of scientists and engineers that meets once every decade, and with the consensus of academia, universities, and the experts, they decide what and how NASA is going to do what they're going to do. Congress would still determine how much the NASA budget is, but the why and the how cannot be in the hands of politicians. They simply do not have the sophistication to make those decisions. They just don't. You don't want them doing brain surgery on people. You don't want them telling NASA what to do. And this is the solution to that, and this is what I'm pushing for.
Did you ever see Space Camp?
I did.
Way back when in the 80s.
I love Leah Thompson.
So did I. Yeah, so did I. Mrs. Ryan went to Space Camp.
I would have loved to have done that as a kid. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. It was really interesting. It was camp. I mean, I was away from home, but it was really neat.
I was one of the kids that dreamed of going.
Yeah.
I would watch Double Dare or whatever the shows were where the grand prize was, you get a trip to space camp, and it was like, man, they're in the stuff and the simulators, and they get the flight suit, and they sleep in the bunks, and they eat the food, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So the fact that you actually must have felt a little bit of that in your own world, enough to go into it and accomplish all the things that you did. I just think it's really neat, and I feel like, again, we said this at the beginning, but there's a great equalizer to space. And when you get outside of our little bubble, it's perspective, right? Zoom out far enough, all these little things we're worrying about, arguing about, all the things, none
Do
of
not
it
matter.
matters.
Exactly.
None of it matters.
In fact, these space telescopes that are being launched and these exoplanets that we're finding, it's just a matter of time until we find life.
Yeah.
And even if it's algae that we find on some planet that off-gasses oxygen, that really should give us pause. It will be the greatest discovery of human history.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about NASA to Hollywood, because that's important to hit.
Right. I'm here pitching the Resolution movie, of course. And so
Which is basically, this is a little bit of the story you told us here
That's
today,
correct.
and further out on both sides.
Yes. And so I have this this YouTube series I'm developing that should be out in like a week, I hope.
Oh, that's
maybe a little
soon?
more, yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that you were that close.
And it's follow along as I come from NASA to Hollywood and compare and contrast, and you know what happens when you introduce a NASA rogue element into Hollywood, and we'll see. And
Do you consider yourself a NASA rogue element?
well, I am now.
Really?
I think since I
because
sent
of what you're saying?
since I sent a space shuttle against the railroad's orders to NASA, I think that
The sealed
yeah,
the deal.
Yeah.
Put you on the calendar anyway.
Right.
Or on the map, whatever you get on when you do those things. What about living entourage? When you're here in Los Angeles, you said you feel like you're living entourage.
Minus
What
the
does that
cars, the money, the women, the houses, yes.
Identical otherwise.
You had Jamie Lynn Siegler on here the other day,
Just
which was
recently, yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah,
and
she's
because I
great.
binge watch Entourage since I've been here. And yeah, I love Entourage.
It's a
And
good show.
and since I was going to be here anyway, I thought, well, I might as well have the Hollywood experience. So I do background
Oh, no kidding.
just to
Good for
kind of
you.
immerse myself in the culture and make contacts. And
You're a fly on the wall guy, too, so that's a great way to take it all
Yeah.
in.
And I've learned a lot doing that. And I've gained a lot of weight because of catering
Yeah.
and crafty.
Craft service.
But I've worked with some amazing people. I just the other day I worked with Lisa Kudrow,
Oh, no kidding.
Love her.
which I shouldn't say what show.
It's
I won't
French
say say what show that is because it hasn't aired. But I've been on the Orville as a alien.
Cool.
That was pretty cool. And they're filming Star Trek right now, so
That's right.
Yeah.
The
Picard.
one,
yeah,
right?
right. But I like Reese Witherspoon and Jessica Alba, Ted Danson, Kristen Bell.
Good for
Renee
you.
Zellweger was the coolest person I've met since I've been
No
here.
kidding.
She was the nicest person. She stayed afterwards. There's an auditorium of people, and she just sat there. Anybody that wanted to come up and meet her would. She's as sweet as you would imagine her.
That's
That is
awesome.
awesome.
to
Just
hear.
a wonderful person.
There are so many things that we didn't really get to talk about. But you're local now, right? You live in
Yes.
Los Angeles, at least
Yes.
for the time being?
That's right.
Would you come back sometime so that we can? I would like to talk more certainly about what your cause is and why. But I would like to get into some of the more details, like maybe certain areas that
Sure,
I
I would
definitely
love
am
to.
interested
It's
in.
been a pleasure being here. And that this is David Letterman's desk.
It
And
was,
we
yeah.
talked about this. I was at a Letterman show on New Year's when he was
Yes.
using this.
Yes.
So
that to me is one of the coolest things.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
And then I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about one of my personal favorite movies. Have you ever seen the movie Tomorrowland? And what do you think if you have seen it?
I did.
There's no wrong answer, by the way.
I did.
I'm alone in that this is one of my favorite movies.
I loved it.
Yes.
It had the heart that
It had what we both need.
That dream, that childlike sense of wonder
And idealism.
Yes, exactly.
Sure. That's interesting. I love
Yeah.
it. It's one of those movies I recommend to anybody. Let's see. Chuck, are you on social media?
I am. You can see more about the story and look at pictures if you go to shuttleresolution.com.
Okay.
And I have the Chuck Ryan Jr. at Facebook and Resolution CMDR, I believe, at Instagram
Commander. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
and Twitter.
Awesome. Love that. And then what, other than, let's see, we've got next week, maybe in a week or two, we've got the NASA to Hollywood, the show, right? YouTube?
A couple of weeks. Give it a couple of
A couple
weeks.
weeks
Yeah.
on YouTube. And then what is your YouTube channel? Or is that just what it's called, NASA to Hollywood, the channel?
Yes.
That's how they find it.
Well, and Chuck Ryan Jr.
Chuck Ryan Jr. on YouTube. I'm sorry, did you just say that? I heard Instagram and Twitter and all the other ones. I didn't hear YouTube. Forgive me if you
I'd
already
have to
said it.
look.
I'm sorry.
to be
as long as we
honest.
said it now.
Right.
As long as we're covered. Mrs. Ryan,
Yes, sir.
thank you so much for being here, Chuck. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
It's
it.
so
And I
nice
can't
to
wait
meet you.
talk
Been a
to you
privilege.
Further. We're going to continue this. Mrs. Ryan, who do we have tomorrow? Oh, Bob Galoob? Am I saying that right?
I believe so.
Comedian?
Comedian actor. He's got a new show, too.
Awesome. And then Thursday, we've got, there's a new restaurant in Los Angeles called Freeman's. And we've got the owner of that restaurant. It's a really hot spot in Silver Lake. The owner of that restaurant, Jonah Freeman, will be here. So that'll be really cool on
Really
Thursday.
excited.
He's also a Porsche owner, so we're probably going to talk some Porsche stuff as well.
Yeah, we see him on Fridays sometimes.
Yeah, the Breakfast Club. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Chuck, we had a blast talking to you, man. I can't wait to continue this further. I don't know what to make of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you
Well, there's
feel?
a lot to. It's a big story. It's a
Yeah.
big story.
It is, and I feel like we just got to it. You know what I'm saying? So next time maybe we'll just jump right in.
Sure.
All right.
Whenever.
Mrs.
be a
Ryan, I think
pleasure.
we're all set. I
Cool.
love you so very much.
Love you
Chuck,
too.
we love you so very much. We love everybody at home. Please love one another, and we will see you tomorrow.